The rain had been falling for 3 hours straight, turning the downtown streets into a maze of puddles and shadows. Officer Maria Santos pulled her patrol car to the side of 5th Street, her radio crackling with static as she responded to yet another noise complaint. It was 2:17 a.m., and the city felt like a ghost town, with only the occasional homeless person seeking shelter under doorways and bus stops. Before we dive in, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow's episode is truly mind-blowing. Let's get started. Maria had been a police officer for 8 years, long enough to know that the night shift brought out both the worst and sometimes the most surprising moments of human nature. She stepped out of her car, adjusting her uniform and checking her radio one more time before walking toward the abandoned warehouse where someone had reported suspicious activity. What she didn't notice was the figure watching her from across the street. Thomas Mitchell had been living on these streets for nearly 4 years now, ever since losing his job as a construction worker and then his apartment. He had learned to be invisible, to watch without being seen, and tonight something about the scene in front of him made every instinct in his body scream danger. Thomas had positioned himself under the broken awning of an old electronics store, using a piece of cardboard to stay somewhat dry. He had seen Officer Santos before on her rounds, always treating the homeless with respect, unlike some of the other officers. She would sometimes stop to check if anyone needed medical attention or just to ask if everything was okay. Tonight, though, something was different. As Maria approached the warehouse entrance, Thomas noticed movement in the shadows near the building's side alley. 3 figures emerged from behind a dumpster, moving silently and deliberately. Even from his distance, Thomas could see they were carrying something that glinted in the sparse streetlight. His heart began to race as he realized what was about to happen. The men had positioned themselves strategically. One was crouched behind a parked van, another had moved to the fire escape ladder, and the third was creeping along the wall toward where Maria would pass. They were setting up an ambush, and the female officer had no idea she was walking into a trap. Thomas felt his hands shake as he gripped his cardboard shelter. Every survival instinct told him to stay hidden, to not get involved, to protect himself first. Getting involved with police business could mean trouble for someone like him. He had warrants for small things like sleeping in public places and trespassing. But watching this brave woman walk unknowingly toward danger made his conscience scream louder than his fear. Maria reached for her flashlight, preparing to investigate the warehouse entrance. The building had been empty for months, and complaints about it usually meant kids had broken into party or homeless people had found a way inside to escape the weather. She expected nothing more complicated than asking someone to move along or maybe finding broken bottles and graffiti. The first attacker was now just 20 feet away, moving closer with each step Maria took. Thomas could see the man raising what looked like a metal pipe or crowbar. The other 2 were closing in from their positions, creating a triangle that would trap the officer with no escape route. Thomas made his decision in that split second. He grabbed an empty glass bottle from beside his cardboard and hurled it as hard as he could toward the parked cars near the warehouse. The bottle shattered against a car windshield with a loud crash that echoed through the quiet street like a gunshot. Maria spun around immediately, her hand moving to her weapon as her training kicked in. The sound had come from behind her, and as she turned, she saw the 3 men who had been approaching her position. The element of surprise was gone, and the attackers found themselves exposed in the open with nowhere to hide. "Police, stop where you are," Maria shouted, drawing her gun and taking cover behind a concrete pillar near the warehouse entrance. Her radio crackled to life as she called for backup, giving her location and reporting 3 suspects with weapons. The attackers, realizing their ambush had failed, scattered in different directions. The one with the metal pipe dropped it and ran toward the alley. The second man tried to climb back up the fire escape, while the third attempted to reach the van he had been hiding behind. Maria pursued the closest suspect, keeping her weapon drawn but maintaining safe distance as she had been trained. Her backup would arrive within minutes, and her priority was keeping the suspects from escaping while staying alive. The shattered glass and her own quick reaction had probably saved her life. From his hiding spot, Thomas watched as more police cars arrived, their sirens wailing and red and blue lights painting the wet streets in alternating colors. Within 10 minutes, all three suspects were in custody. Maria had handled the situation perfectly once she knew about the danger, but Thomas knew that without his warning, things would have ended very differently. As the excitement died down and the suspects were loaded into patrol cars, Thomas began to pack up his cardboard and few belongings. He needed to move before someone noticed him and started asking questions. But as he stood up to leave, he found Officer Santos walking directly toward him. "Sir, I need to speak with you for a moment," Maria said, her voice gentle but official. Thomas felt his stomach drop, thinking he was about to be arrested for the warrants he knew existed in his name. He had done the right thing, but good deeds didn't erase past mistakes. "I'm sorry, officer. I was just trying to get out of the rain." "I'll move along now," Thomas said, gathering his things quickly and avoiding eye contact. "Wait," Maria said, raising her hand in a peaceful gesture. "You threw that bottle, didn't you? You saw them coming for me." Thomas stopped moving but still didn't look up. "I don't know what you mean, ma'am. I was just sitting here trying to stay dry." Maria studied his face, seeing the fear and resignation there. She had worked these streets long enough to recognize someone who expected the worst from every interaction with law enforcement. "What's your name?" she asked softly. "Thomas Mitchell," he replied, figuring there was no point in lying now that she had connected him to the incident. "Thomas, I ran your name while we were processing the scene. I know about the warrants, but I also know what you did tonight. Those men were planning to hurt me, possibly kill me. You saved my life by making that noise." Thomas finally looked up at her, confusion replacing some of the fear in his expression. "So what happens now?" Maria was quiet for a long moment, thinking about department policy, about her duty as an officer, and about the debt she owed this man. "Now you disappear for about 5 minutes while I finish my paperwork. I need to focus on the suspects we caught tonight, not chase down minor warrant issues." Thomas stared at her in disbelief. "You're letting me go." "I'm saying that a good citizen helped prevent a violent crime tonight, and sometimes good citizenship deserves recognition, not punishment," Maria replied. "But Thomas, those warrants aren't going away. You might want to think about getting some help, maybe talking to someone about options for dealing with them legally." "I will," Thomas said, meaning it. "And officer, be careful out here. Those guys tonight, they knew exactly where you'd be and when. That wasn't random." Maria nodded, having reached the same conclusion. The attack had been too well planned, too coordinated. Someone had known her patrol route and timing. "I'll be more careful. Thank you, Thomas, really." As Thomas gathered his belongings and prepared to find another place to spend the rest of the night, Maria returned to her patrol car to file her report. She would write about the three suspects, about their apparent plan to ambush a police officer, and about how an alert citizen's quick thinking had prevented a potential tragedy. What she wouldn't write about was exactly who that citizen was or where he had gone afterward. Some acts of kindness deserved to be repaid in kind, even if it meant bending a few rules. Thomas found shelter in a 24-hour laundromat 6 blocks away, sitting in the corner with a cup of coffee he bought from the vending machine using the few quarters he had left. As he warmed up and processed what had happened, he thought about Officer Santos and her suggestion about dealing with his warrants legally. Maybe it was time to stop running from his problems. The woman had risked her career to give him a chance tonight, and that kind of trust deserved to be honored. He had been living day to day for so long that thinking about the future felt strange, but for the first time in years, he had hoped that things might get better. Meanwhile, Maria finished her shift and headed home as the sun began to rise over the city. She would spend the next few days reviewing her patrol routes and working with her sergeant to figure out how the attackers had known her schedule so precisely. There would be investigations and additional security measures. But every time she thought about what could have happened in that alley, she remembered the sound of breaking glass that had saved her life. Sometimes help came from the most unexpected places, and sometimes the people society ignored were the ones who stepped up when it mattered most. The next evening, as Maria began her shift, She found herself driving by the electronics store where Thomas had been sheltering. The area was empty except for the usual urban debris and a few pigeons searching for food scraps. She wondered where he had gone and whether he would follow through on getting help with his legal situation. 3 weeks later, Thomas walked into the downtown courthouse wearing a borrowed suit and carrying paperwork he had spent days filling out with help from a legal aid lawyer. Officer Santos had been right about there being options for dealing with his warrants. Some community service, a small fine he could pay in installments, and proof that he was seeking stable housing and employment. It wasn't easy and it wasn't quick, but it was possible. And for the first time in years, Thomas was taking control of his life instead of just surviving it. The memory of that rainy night and the officer who had shown him unexpected kindness kept him motivated through the difficult process of rebuilding. As he waited for his case to be called, Thomas thought about how one moment of choosing to do the right thing, even when it was dangerous and could have brought him trouble, had changed everything. He had expected nothing in return for helping Officer Santos, but she had given him something more valuable than money or food. She had given him hope and a chance to start over. The bailiff called his name, and Thomas stood up, ready to face his past and work toward a better future. Outside, the city continued its endless cycle of day and night, bringing together strangers whose lives touched briefly but meaningfully, proving that even in the hardest circumstances, people could still choose to help each other. That night, Officer Santos began her patrol shift as usual, but with renewed awareness of both the dangers and the unexpected allies that existed in the shadows of the city streets. She never saw Thomas again, but she carried the memory of his selfless act as a reminder that heroism often came from the most unlikely places, and that sometimes the people who had the least to give were the most willing to sacrifice for others.